Hello, students. Today, I'd like to talk about semicolons. A lot of you are using semicolons in your papers. Some are using them correctly, others not. And I find generally that there's a little bit of misinformation about how exactly we should use semicolons floating around out there. So I like to spend a little time every semester making sure that we're all sort of on the same page. Today, I'll present two distinct ways of using the semicolon. To me, these are sort of the two ways of using a semicolon. But you'll see one is sort of standard and the other has a little more nuance. So let's jump right in. Number one, use the semicolon to connect two complete sentences that are directly related to one another. Right? This is, I have found sort of what most students come to college with the knowledge of, right? You use a semicolon to connect two independent clauses or complete sentences that are related to one another, right? So my example is here we have two sentences. Alligators have incredibly powerful jaws. Therefore, one should avoid placing one's appendages into an alligator's mouth. So alligators have incredibly powerful jaws, and therefore one should avoid placing one's appendages into an alligator's mouth are both complete sentences and what we call independent clauses, right? They both have a subject and a verb. What's more is that they are closely related, right? One thought leads directly to the next, somewhat obviously. So, in a case like this, we can simply place a semicolon in the place of a period, right? Semicolon is always followed by a lowercase letter, unless it's a proper noun, of course. So now we have a simpler, more flowing sentence, right? Those two thoughts are more closely related. So we're off to a good start. As is, this sentence is totally correct, right? It wouldn't receive any red marks as I went through grading. But in my opinion, there's no reason not to use a period to separate those two ideas, right? A semicolon is an option you have, but there truly is no reason not to simply place a period between these two sentences. In many cases, a semicolon is a little distracting. So when you feel tempted to use a semicolon, I want you to think twice and consider whether or not a period is actually more appropriate. And here's what I'll say to add a little context to that. The semicolon really comes in handy when you have two complete sentences that are both related to one another and very complex, right? So when you have sentences that are connected and related and complete, but are full of other full of other punctuation marks, grammatical gestures, images, etc. Right? So here's an example from Merriam-Webster's Online Writing Lab. As Mabel's culinary efforts continued, with bread baking in the oven, a cabbage dish just begun, she admonished Harry to keep out of her way, semicolon. But Harry's ability to remain at a decent distance from the stove was severely challenged, right? So we have the initial thought here, that's rendered in a complete sentence. Mabel's in the kitchen, a lot of stuff is happening, there's bread baking, there's cabbage on the stove, and there's little Harry undertow. And then, of course, the author wants to connect these two thoughts, right? Harry is undertow because he really wants to be in the kitchen, right? Or his ability to remain at a distance is severely challenged, right? So here's an example of using the semicolon to sort of smooth out the sentences and to avoid the run-on, right? In some cases, you might write a sentence like this or sentences like this, and you want to connect with a simple comma, right? But in this case, adding a comma there in place of a semicolon makes for a run-on sentence. So using a semicolon is just a little clearer. These two thoughts are very related, but separate. And that helps your reader parse the grammar, right? So especially when you're dealing with complex sentences, consider using a semicolon in place of a comma or a period. So that's number one, right? We return to our alligator. Using a semicolon to connect two complete sentences that are directly related to one another, right? Sentences directly related to one another, complete sentences can be connected with a semicolon. And here's number two. I'll scroll down a little bit. A semicolon can be used to organize a complex list. Right? This is sort of my favorite use of the semicolon. Imagine you were trying to describe in writing a long list of options for a smoothie. Right? Here are the available options: banana and strawberry, kiwi, banana, spinach, and blueberry, blueberry and raspberry, peanut butter, strawberry, and coconut milk, and coconut, banana, and chocolate, right? You want to render that list, not in a bulleted form, but in a paragraph form, in a sentence, right? So you might be compelled to craft the list in the usual way, writing something like, The smoothie options were banana and strawberry, kiwi, banana, spinach, and blueberry, blueberry and raspberry, peanut butter, strawberry and coconut milk, and coconut, banana, and chocolate. Right? This too is technically a grammatically correct sentence, right? But for the average reader, reading something like that will be very confusing, right? So enter the semicolon. Here, the semicolon can be used to separate each flavor from the other while maintaining a simple sentence structure. So simply place this in a case like this, we simply place a semicolon between the flavors and keep the final conjunction and as is. So this and right here will stay. That will give us something much more easy, right? The smoothie options were banana and strawberry, kiwi, banana, and spinach, blueberry and raspberry, peanut butter, strawberry, and coconut milk, and coconut, banana, and chocolate, right? The simple addition of the semicolon here, while there aren't complete sentences on either side of those semicolons, makes the list so much easier to read, right? So you have the alligator, right? Connecting two related thoughts that are rendered in complete sentences, and you have the smoothie, right? Using a semicolon to organize a list of complex things, right? So that's it. I hope you learned a little something about the semicolon, and of course, going forward, if you have any additional questions, send them my way. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in class.